Chapter 61, Pastry. The two of them were in no hurry to go down the mountain. Instead, they discussed the new products they were going to supply this time. Yu Bing squatted on the ground and wrote on the ground with a tree branch. After a while, she raised her head and said, "I saw that some of the sugarcane fields have already ripened, and some look like they can only be harvested a month later. It just so happens that we can extend the supply time. After all, it's quite time-consuming to process sugarcane. We can't handle too many at once." Seeing this, Xiaoxing also squatted down and turned to look at Yu Bing. "For convenience's sake, if this batch of goods is handed over once every 3 days, how much do we supply each time?" Yu Bing said the pre-calculated number, 20 pounds. "We have to process at least 400 pounds of sugarcane for 20 pounds of brown sugar." Xiaoxing nodded. "Now, the brown sugar on the black market is 1 yuan for those without stamps. I'll try to negotiate to bring the price down to 0.7 yuan. The two of them decided on the supply of brown sugar and began to discuss smoked meat products. Xiaoxing had never heard of this before, so it was basically Yu Bing who arranged it. The cooking period for smoked meat was relatively long. Yu Bing and Xiaoxing explained their considerations. These meat have to be marinated for 3 to 7 days first and dried for 3 to 7 days. After the water is dried, it will be smoked for about 8 hours. It will take at least 10 days to half a month. I suggest that the prey be processed after they reach a certain amount." Xiaoxing didn't expect smoked meat to be so troublesome. He frowned and said, "But I often only catch one prey every 3 to 5 days. How long do we have to save them before we can smoke them even once?" When Yu Bing heard this, she couldn't help but feel vexed. She propped half of her face with her hand as she looked at Xiaoxing. "Has no one been further into the mountain? Perhaps there will be larger animals like wild boars? Even if there are no wild boars, there should be more small animals in sparsely populated places, right?" Xiaoxing pondered for a moment before saying, "Then let's set up a trap at the depth of the sugarcane field and expand the hunting range from left to right. I'm afraid we'll enter the fog forest if we're not careful." Yu Bing repeated curiously, "The fog forest?" Seeing this, Xiaoxing told Yu Bing about the legend that no one came out alive after entering the fog forest. Yu Bing was intrigued. In her previous life, she had never heard of this legend. "Then does anyone know where the fog forest is?" Seeing that Yu Bing was interested, Xiaoxing continued, "No one probably knows anymore. This is a legend that has been passed down by word of mouth since hundreds of years ago. I only know that an ancestor erected a monument outside the fog forest to warn future generations to prevent anyone from entering by mistake." Yu Bing guessed that Xiaoxing only knew this much, so she didn't ask further. After looking at the size of the wooden house, she said, "Then let's make 300 pounds at once. This place is large enough to parch all of them." When Xiaoxing heard Yu Bing's bold words, he couldn't help but smile and say, "Then we have to hunt a pig so you can showcase your skills quickly." Yu Bing ignored Xiaoxing's teasing. After all, one had to have a goal. After discussing, the two of them decided that in order to have meat to smoke as soon as possible, they had to expand their hunting range. Then, the two of them took the samples and went down the mountain. Xiaoxing took advantage of the day off to go to the county city openly. After finding Brother Chang, he discussed the price and supply time. Ever since he started working with Yu Bing, Xiaoxing had saved money much faster. This time, he prepared to buy some pastries for his siblings. When it was Xiaoxing's turn, the salesperson looked impatient when she heard that he wanted to buy pastries. However, when she saw Xiaoxing's handsome face, she immediately became more patient. "They're already gone. The next batch will arrive 5 days later. Isn't there still half a month until the Mid-Autumn Festival? Now, whenever the pastries are back in stock, they'll be sold out 2 hours later. If you want to buy them, you better arrive before we open the door." Xiaoxing didn't even realize that the Mid-Autumn Festival was coming up. When he heard the salesperson's words, he suddenly had an idea and ran out of the supply company to look for Zhao Quan. When Zhao Quan saw that Xiaoxing was looking for him, he immediately greeted him warmly, "Brother Quan, why are you looking for me at this time?" The two of them were familiar with each other, so Xiaoxing went straight to the point. He smiled and said, "Brother Quan, I wanted to ask you if the prices of pastries on the black market are higher than usual during the Mid-Autumn Festival." When Zhao Quan heard this, he knew that Xiaoxing was trying to get a feel for the market, so he said, "It's indeed a little high. It's the Mid-Autumn Festival, so people have to visit family and friends. Why? Do you have any new ideas?" After saying that, he raised his eyebrows and smiled. Xiaoxing revealed a smile. "I secretly learned how to make a sort of pastry recently. I thought that if the price was good, I would make some for you to sell during the holidays. I secretly learned it for a long time and wasted a lot of materials in the process. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." Chapter 62, Unique. Seeing that there was more business, Zhao Quan hugged Xiaoxing's shoulder with one hand and said with a smile, "The market price isn't bad these few days. If you have goods, provide them early on. Otherwise, you'll miss this wave of popularity." When Xiaoxing heard this, he didn't hesitate and directly set a time with Zhao Quan. When he delivered the vegetables and loach soup tomorrow, he would bring the pastries over for him to try. When Xiaoxing rushed to Yu Bing's house excitedly, Yu Bing and Jiang Chun were making honey osmanthus wine. Seeing Xiaoxing enter the kitchen with a smile, Yu Bing smiled and teased, "Why do you look so happy? Did they raise the price for you this time?" Xiaoxing crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame. He raised his eyebrows and said softly, "The price didn't increase, but I got it for 0.7 yuan. I even accepted another deal." Yu Bing unscrewed the bottle cap and placed it in the shade. "You gained a lot this time. What business deal?" Xiaoxing entered the kitchen and sat on the stool. "Doesn't everyone want to give gifts during the Mid-Autumn Festival? This year, the supply of snacks isn't good, so the black market will be doing very well. The prices will be higher than usual." Seeing that the two of them were discussing selling goods, Jiang Chun immediately carried a small wooden stool and sat in the courtyard opposite the door. She took the bean she wanted to eat tonight to peel. When Yu Bing heard this, she was very tempted. This was a short-term business, and the profit would be higher than usual. She would have to work a little harder during this period of time, but it wouldn't delay supplying other goods. It was indeed a good choice to earn extra money. Yu Bing also found a stool and sat down. "We have to use flour for pastries. I took food stamps to the supply company to buy 15 pounds. Xiaoxing estimated the amount of flour at home and said, "My family still has 30 pounds left. Let's see what we can do first. We'll see the price they give after tasting it tomorrow. If it's worth it, I'll think of a way to get some elsewhere." Yu Bing felt that Xiaoxing had thought it through, so she didn't say anything else. As for the new product, she thought for a while before saying, "Can you get milk? If you can, we'll make pumpkin cakes. If you can't, we can only make pumpkin sponge cakes." Xiaoxing had only eaten sponge cake before, so he asked about the difference between the two curiously. Yu Bing continued to explain patiently, "Pumpkin cakes are more exquisite. They look translucent and have a faint milky fragrance. However, pumpkin sponge cakes are more ordinary. I can only add 2 eggs to increase the taste and flavor. I'll also add some honey osmanthus wine that I marinated today to improve the flavor." Xiaoxing hesitated for a moment when he heard this. In the end, he could only say helplessly, "The milk has to go to the farm in the suburbs of the county, but the farm isn't available to the public. I can't get it now. Let's make sponge cake." Because Jiang Chun didn't know how to make pastries, she woke up at 2 a.m. the next day. Jiang Chun learned how to make pumpkin sponge cake from Yu Bing while making loach soup. This way, the two of them could take turns making them. Yu Bing cut off a piece of the pumpkin that Xiaoxing had brought and then peeled it and cut it into thin slices before putting it into a plate. She steamed it for 15 minutes with a large fire. Then, she added an egg, a suitable amount of white sugar and salt, and stirred them with the pumpkin paste. After adding flour, she added a little yeast powder and stirred it into batter before covering it with a steamed cloth. An hour later, she took out a large bowl and brushed oil onto the bottom of the bowl. She poured the batter into it and waited for half an hour. Then, she placed it in a pot of cold water and steamed it for half an hour. After the finished product was brought out, Yu Bing removed the dough and cut it into a square. Then, she gently brushed a layer of marinated honey osmanthus wine on the surface and placed it in a lunchbox for Xiaoxing. In the county city, Zhao Quan was trying out the pumpkin sponge cake. He first tasted the sweetness of the honey osmanthus in his mouth, then chewed a few times and realized that there was a faint egg aroma amidst the sweetness of the pumpkin. The texture was rich. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Are there eggs in here?" Xiaoxing had already eaten when he received the goods, and he knew the recipe for the sponge cake, so he nodded affirmatively and said with a smile, "I put eggs in it. Not only are there eggs in my cake, but there's also osmanthus wine made from wild honey. It's nutritious. Be it giving gifts during the holidays or eating it yourself, the taste and quality are much better than those sold elsewhere." Zhao Quan was a shrewd businessman. He could tell that the sponge cake Xiaoxing was holding was indeed unique in the county. However, he only smiled faintly and said, "The taste isn't bad. At the moment, ordinary pumpkin cakes in the market sell for 0.47 yuan per caddy. Yours can be sold for 0.6 yuan at most. I don't earn much. I'll take 0.15 yuan and give you 0.45 yuan per caddy." Before Xiaoxing came, he calculated that the cost was 0.3 yuan per pound. He could only earn 0.15 yuan according to Zhao Quan's price. However, this pastry took longer to make than loach soup, so he said to Zhao Quan with a bitter expression, "Brother Quan, this honey is wild. There are even eggs added. The nutritional value is very high. It's really not worth all the trouble to make unless the price is higher than 0.5 yuan a caddy. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 63, Election. Xiaoxing's counteroffer was also within Zhao Quan's expectations. Didn't business rely on barter? Zhao Quan was in no hurry to reply. He lowered his eyes and pondered over it. Xiaoxing was in no hurry. He stood at the side and waited for a reply. Seeing this, Zhao Quan knew that Xiaoxing wouldn't back down. Hence, he quickly thought about the supply direction and the price increase caused by the holidays. After confirming that he could sell it at a higher price, he agreed to Xiaoxing's price. The two of them agreed to supply 20 pounds a day until 3 days before the holidays. This was because at this time of the holiday, all the pastries would have already been sent to relatives and friends. It was just right to stop supplying them at that point. After a break, a new round of work began. Yu Bing went to the county city early in the morning to explore the land and transport goods. When she finished her work in the morning, she saw Song Jian and the people from the Agriculture Bureau appear at the agricultural base in the suburbs. Yu Bing thought that Song Jian was probably here to visit and ask about the base plan of the Agriculture Bureau, so she didn't take the initiative to drive over to greet him. Instead, she drank a mouthful of water before preparing to start the car and drive home. At this moment, Song Jian's mirthful voice came from behind her. You didn't even greet me when you saw me? Yu Bing hurriedly turned around and realized that Song Jian was standing behind her alone. She hurriedly explained, Brother-in-law, I saw that you were busy just now, so I didn't go up because I was afraid of disturbing you. Song Jian knew that Yu Bing was deliberately avoiding suspicion for the sake of his reputation, so he naturally wouldn't fuss over it. He lowered his glasses and smiled gently. I came here to consult people on the plan for planting crops at the base. The second reason is that Friday is Little Treasure's full-month baby shower. You can go over directly from the county after work. As a godmother, you have to find time to come to the house for a meal that day. When Yu Bing heard this, she smiled and replied, I definitely have to go on such an important day. Then I won't stand on ceremony. I'll go freeload a meal. Song Jian smiled brightly and said, we all treat you as family, so don't stand on ceremony. By the way, your village doesn't have a village chief now. Is everything okay? When Yu Bing heard the question, she was suddenly stunned. To be honest, without the Sun family in the village, Yu Bing felt that the He Mountain Brigade was much more peaceful. Everything is quite good. I hope that the new village chief can lead us to focus on work instead of doing things that compromise unity. Yu Bing could tell that the Song family's father and son were practical officials. After all, she was also a member of the He Mountain Brigade, so she directly said her hopes for the new village chief. Song Jian nodded and said with emotion, yes, working hard and raising the people's standard of living is what everyone wants the most. Then, he asked casually, Yu Bing, do you have anyone you want to choose? In 10 days, we'll go to your village to witness the election. When Yu Bing heard this news, she was shocked. In 10 days? Song Jian raised his eyebrows and nodded. There will probably be an announcement in your village on Thursday for those who want to sign up to participate. The entire village will vote next Wednesday. Yu Bing processed this for a moment and continued to ask, it's quite imminent then. Brother-in-law, I'm going back to the village now. Do you want to come with me? It's on the way. Song Jian smiled and waved his hand. I still have to go to the Agriculture Bureau later. You can leave first. After the two of them said goodbye, Yu Bing drove the tractor back to the village. Yu Bing took a shower after running at night before slipping into the Xiao family's house. When Yu Bing saw Xiao Li and Xiao Lin working in the courtyard under the moonlight, Yu Bing stuffed 2 candies into their hands. After thanking her, the two of them carefully placed the candy in their mouths. After Xiao Li put it in her mouth, she said in surprise, this is orange-flavored candy. Xiao Lin hurriedly said, this is apple-flavored. Yu Bing smiled. This is the fruit candy I bought previously. There are flavors of all kinds of fruits. This was the first time Xiao Li and Xiao Lin had eaten it, so they felt intrigued. They had only eaten malt candy before and only tasted mint candies for the first time after meeting Yu Bing. Now, they were amazed to discover fruit candy. Children's happiness was that simple. A little piece of candy could make them happy for a long time. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 64, Uncle Jane. Yu Bing looked up and realized that Xiaoxing wasn't around. She asked Xiao Lin, where's your brother? Although they were in their own courtyard, Xiao Lin still covered his mouth with his hand and whispered, my brother didn't even eat before going into the mountain to set a trap for the animals. After Yu Bing chatted with him for half an hour, Xiaoxing returned with sweat all over his face. Shaolin hurriedly poured a bowl of water and handed it forward. Brother, drink water. Xiaoxing took it and finished it in one go. Only then did he see Yu Bing. Why did you come? When Yu Bing heard this, she smiled and asked, can't I come even if there's no reason? Xiaoxing smiled helplessly and said, I didn't mean that. You usually don't come if you have nothing to do. These words made Yu Bing blush. Every time she came to the Xiao family's house, she seemed to have a motive. Fortunately, with the cover of the night, Yu Bing subconsciously ignored the embarrassment. Shaolin said that you haven't eaten yet. Eat first and let's talk while eating. The two of them entered the kitchen together. Xiaoxing took off the bamboo lid that blocked the small insects, revealing the food inside. There was a large bowl of sweet potato rice, a plate of stir-fried bitter melon, and cold cucumber. Yu Bing watched as Xiaoxing ate a large mouthful before saying her purpose. If the village wants to choose a new village chief, who do you want to choose? When Xiaoxing heard Yu Bing's question, he ate as he pondered over it. I can roughly guess a few people who are most likely to sign up for the election, but I don't want to choose any of them. When Xiaoxing heard Yu Bing's question, he ate and thought for a while. I can roughly guess a few people who are most likely to sign up for the election, but I don't want to choose any of them. When Xiaoxing saw Yu Bing asking so eagerly, he swallowed his food and raised his eyebrows at Yu Bing. You look so curious. Do you want to sign up? The most important things in Yu Bing's life were to stay healthy and earn more money. At the same time, she would let the scumbag, slut, and the people who harmed her suffer retribution. She wanted to make up for the good fortune she didn't enjoy in her previous life. Yu Bing looked back at Xiaoxing and said calmly, I don't have that much time. However, if you sign up, I can vote for you. I can also help you get Jiang Chun's vote. To Xiaoxing, earning money to treat his sister's eyes was the most important thing. He didn't have the time or energy to care about the rest. When Xiaoxing heard this, he lifted the bitter gourd and picked up a piece with his chopsticks. He slowly said, I don't have that much time either. I don't even have enough time to earn money. You don't have to be so conflicted about your vote. It won't play a key role. When Yu Bing heard this, she pursed her lips and rolled her eyes. My vote might not make a big difference, but this vote can express my attitude. To me, this is a very serious matter. Moreover, if we can choose a village chief who is competent, isn't it better than finding a troublemaker like Sun Wang? After saying that, she sat beside Xiaoxing and stuck her head out. She imitated Shaolin by covering her mouth with her hand as she said softly, if we can choose a bold person who helps our village develop and thinks of the big picture, we might not have to be so secretive. Most of the cadres like to talk about policies now, but can mere policies put bread on the table? The two of them were so close that Xiaoxing could smell the fragrance of the jasmine soap on Yu Bing after she showered. After Yu Bing finished speaking, she saw Xiaoxing staring at the table in a daze. She stretched out her hand and waved it in front of Xiaoxing's eyes. What are you thinking about? Did you hear me? Xiaoxing came back to his senses. His Adam's apple bobbed as he said dryly, I'm listening. Find a village chief who's willing to do business. Yu Bing nodded in admiration. The summary is spot on. Although our village isn't so poor that people starve to death, the number of times most villagers can eat meat all year round can be counted with 2 hands. They only eat vegetables every day. Xiaoxing recalled Yu Bing's words and felt that she made sense. Everyone was too poor now, so something must be done. Because of public policy, many people couldn't even raise a few more chickens to eat eggs. If anyone found out that they had secretly sold things, they would definitely be reported. However, if everyone was involved in these side hustles, they would be in the same boat, just like when Yu Bing was called over to eat the bowl of rabbit meat after she discovered him. The best case scenario would be that the village chief would lead everyone to find a way to get rich. Then, everyone would be able to earn money openly. Xiaoxing suddenly thought of someone. Actually, there's someone who fits the requirements you mentioned, but he definitely won't sign up for the election. Yu Bing hurriedly asked, who is it? Xiaoxing looked at Yu Bing fixedly. Uncle Jin, your disciple Wu Qing's father. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 65, Persuasion. Yu Bing thought of the limping man she saw that day. Why won't he sign up? Why don't we convince him? Xiaoxing glanced at Yu Bing and continued eating. Seeing this, Yu Bing poked Xiaoxing's arm. Speak. After Xiaoxing finished his last bite of rice, he looked at Yu Bing helplessly. I can't tell you why. Yu Bing frowned as she looked at Xiaoxing. She thought about it for a moment and said, it's fine if I don't know. Then why don't you convince him? Xiaoxing lowered his eyes and thought about what Yu Bing had said before. He whispered, I'll try. When Yu Bing heard this, her eyes lit up. All the best. Tell me more about Uncle Jin. Yu Bing had a good impression of Uncle Jin before. After hearing from Wu Qing that Uncle Jean was a retired soldier, she had an even better impression of him. Now that she heard from Xiaoxing that Uncle Jean met all the conditions she mentioned, Yu Bing was even more curious about Uncle Jean. Xiaoxing was a reliable and smart person in Yu Bing's eyes. There were very few people who could obtain his approval. Xiaoxing thought for a moment and said slowly, actually, many people in the village are indebted to Uncle Jean and Uncle Jin's father. The Wu family was the largest landlord in this village in the past. Later, in order to support the unification of the country, they sold many assets to support the front line. Not long after this incident, there was another flood in the village. That year, there was no harvest, and many villagers' houses were washed away. Not only did the Wu family exempted 2 years of rent, but they also opened a warehouse to distribute grain to save the villagers of the He Mountain Brigade. Everyone survived those 2 years with difficulty. If not for the Wu family's actions at that time, many people wouldn't have survived that natural disaster. Uncle Jean is the only descendant of the Wu family. In order to protect the country, he resolutely joined the army. Later, after the war was won, Uncle Jean advised his father to support the country's nationalization policy and take the initiative to hand over his land. Their family has a very good reputation in Jiangning County. Later, Uncle Jean retired from the army because of an injury. The country arranged a job for him in the county city, but because of some reasons, Uncle Jean refused and returned to the village. One year, there was a famine, but Uncle Jean brought the villagers through it. However, I was still young at that time, so I don't know what Uncle Jean did exactly, but I know that if Uncle Jean had participated in the village chief election back then, Sun Wang wouldn't have had a chance. Yu Bing supported her chin with one hand and listened with relish. So the key to this matter is whether Uncle Jean wants to be the village chief. Xiaoxing nodded. After confirming that Xiaoxing would talk to Uncle Jean as soon as possible, Yu Bing went home. The next day, after lunch, Xiaoxing went straight to Wu Jin's house. When he entered, he saw Wu Jin's mother taking off her shoes. Xiaoxing smiled and went forward. He greeted politely, "Grandma Wu, I'm looking for Uncle Jean." When Grandma Wu looked up and saw that it was Xiaoxing, a smile immediately appeared on her gentle face. "Ah Xing, you're here. Uncle Jean is in the courtyard at the back." Xiaoxing entered the backyard with familiarity. When he saw Wu Jin repairing the stool, he shouted, "Uncle Jean." When Wu Jin turned around and saw Xiaoxing, he casually pointed at the stool beside him and turned around to continue repairing. "Ah Xing, sit. Why are you looking for me?" After Xiaoxing sat down, he thought about how to bring it up to Wu Jin. From the corner of his eye, Wu Jin saw Xiaoxing hesitate to speak. He smiled and took the initiative to say, "Tell me. I want to see what's so difficult for you to bring up." Xiaoxing looked at Wu Jin and probed, "Uncle Jean, Sun Wang has been captured. The village will definitely choose a new village chief." Wu Jin paused and put down the stool in his hand. "You want me to run for village chief?" Xiaoxing thought for a moment and nodded firmly. "Uncle Jean, I know you're not interested in power and have more important things to do, but have you ever thought that this isn't a long-term solution? What if the new village chief is a villain who's good at exploiting his power? Moreover, the Sun family has been indebted to you, so they help you get the permission slip to leave town every quarter. But can you guarantee that you can get the permission slip from the new village chief? If you can't get them, what will happen to the people you have to take care of?" Other than the Wu family, Xiaoxing was the only person in the village who knew that Wu Jin was selling local specialties with his comrades. Xiaoxing was able to enter this industry because Wu Jin had brought him along. 5 years ago, when Xiaoli had a high fever that didn't subside, Xiaoxing borrowed a lot of money to bring Xiaoli to the hospital for treatment, but even after spending all the money, Xiaoli's fever didn't subside. He was unwilling to return to the village to borrow money. At that time, only Wu Jin was willing to lend him money. It was all thanks to this money that Xiaoli could stay in the hospital for 2 more days until her fever subsided. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 66, New Path. Wu Jin was Xiaoxing's benefactor. Xiaoxing suggested this for the sake of Wu Jin since he hoped that he would be safe. After all, the path Wu Jin took was much more dangerous than his. These days, when one left their residence, they might face the risk of having their luggage checked at any time. This was especially so for long-distance trains. They loved to check if anyone was carrying a lot of food. Once they were discovered, they would be arrested and investigated. Once they were convicted of using the opportunity to seek personal gain, their lives would be screwed. When Wu Jin heard Xiaoxing's words, he fell silent. After a few minutes, he said, "After I left the army, the country arranged for me to become the director of security at the milk factory. Do you know why I resigned after refusing and returned to the village?" This was the first time Xiaoxing had heard Wu Jin mention the reason for returning to the village. Back then, many people didn't understand Wu Jin's actions. After all, between being a cadre in the city and an ordinary farmer, everyone would choose the former. Xiaoxing thought for a moment before replying, to earn money? Wu Jing pursed his lips and revealed a lonesome smile. That's only one of the reasons. The most important thing is that I don't want to wear a public official's uniform but do things that are inconsistent with national policy. When Xiaoxing heard this answer, the expression on his face became ambivalent. A trace of confusion flashed across his eyes as he looked at Wu Jing. Uncle Jing, but the current policy makes it so that we might not even be able to eat our fill. Why should we carry it out? Could it be that wanting to eat our fill, eat meat, and wear warm clothes in winter isn't right? Xiaoxing's words struck a chord with Wu Jing. Looking at the boy in front of him who had been shouldering the heavy responsibility of his family since he was 13 years old, he reached out and rubbed the top of Xiaoxing's head. He said gently, of course, it's not wrong to want to eat your fill and wear warm clothes, but you have to know that no matter if it's a person or a country, there will be times when they take the wrong path and do something wrong. Now, our country has taken the wrong path. I believe the leaders will definitely realize the problem and correct it, so we have to wait patiently. Xiaoxing looked at Wu Jing quietly and said slowly, but the reality is that none of us know when the mistakes will be corrected. However, the conflict of supply and demand will always exist before that. Many people in the village are not in good health and go to the hospital for treatment. Everyone says that it's caused by malnutrition. What caused the malnutrition? Isn't it just hunger? Uncle Jing, in order to fight for power with the security director, Lu Bao, Sun Wang had done many things that harmed the interests of our village. I don't believe you don't know. After Sun Wang is toppled, Lu Bao is the most likely to be chosen. He's slightly better than Sun Wang and can be considered fair, but he has always been conservative. He doesn't have the ability to lead the villagers to a good life. Wu Jing looked down at the ground expressionlessly. After a long while, he said in a low and hoarse voice, I need to think about it. When Xiaoxing heard this, he knew that there was a chance. He thought for a moment and said, Uncle Jing, if you become the village chief, you might be able to find a balance between leading the villagers to become rich and improving the economy under the current policies. Isn't this more reliable than running around all day? Wu Jing smiled when he heard this and looked up at Xiaoxing. You're becoming more and more eloquent. Xiaoxing smiled when he heard this. He had already said what he needed to say, so he stood up and said goodbye to Wu Jing. He turned around and saw Wu Qing, who was looking at him in a daze not far away. Wu Qing came back to his senses and smiled as he went forward to greet him. Brother Xing. Xiaoxing looked at Wu Qing and patted his shoulder before leaving the Wu family's home. Although Wu Qing didn't hear everything, he could tell why Xiaoxing was here. After Xiaoxing left, Wu Qing walked to his father's side and squatted down. Dad, I think Brother Xing is right. Didn't you always say that we have to look at the long-term development? I think what Brother Xing said is the long-term development you mentioned. Wu Jing was indeed persuaded by Xiaoxing, but he didn't expect his son to take Xiaoxing's side so quickly. He glanced at Wu Qing and said with mock anger, don't be a lobbyist for Brother Xing. I'll consider it seriously myself. He smiled foolishly when he heard this. He was persuaded by Xiaoxing's words mostly because he was worried about his father. Every time his father went out to get the goods, he and his grandmother would be on tenterhooks, especially since his grandmother couldn't sleep well at night. If only they could find a different path like Brother Xing said. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 67, Took the Wrong One. It was late at night. Wu Jing took out a metal box from the bottom of the bentwood box. When he opened it, there were a few bills and a notebook, as well as a few photos. Wu Jing took out one of the group photos and approached the kerosene lamp. In the photo, there were 30 men in military uniforms. This was the most comprehensive photo of the entire platoon. Before Wu Jing retired from the army, he was a platoon leader. After that war, less than 10 people out of the 30 people survived. Wu Jing also retired from the army after being injured at that time. Some of the comrades who sacrificed themselves came from poor families. They had elders and children at home. Without men to support them, their lives would be more difficult than others. After Wu Jing retired from the army, he discussed it with the other two comrades who had retired from the army and returned to the village. The place where the three of them were located was very far apart. One's hometown was rich in mushrooms and worm grass, while the other's hometown was rich in dates and walnuts. These were all dry goods that were convenient to carry and keep. Wu Jing was in charge of collecting the goods and returning to City H to find a way to sell them. After the bus fare was deducted, the rest of the money he earned was basically sent to the families of his comrades who were having trouble making ends meet. He made the trip twice a year. He was quite lucky and had only been caught once in all these years. It was all thanks to his vigilance that he was not caught. Wu Jin looked at these slightly yellowed photos and thought of the new path Xiaoxing had mentioned today. In the end, he decided to sign up for the village chief election. On Thursday morning, Lu Bao's voice sounded from the village's broadcast. Good morning, villagers. We will now issue a major announcement. Due to the vacancy of the He Mountain Brigade's village chief position, the commune's leaders have decided to hold a village chief election at 3 p.m. next Wednesday at the rice field in front of the village committee. The three with the most votes will be chosen as final candidates. After the commune's leaders' review, the village chief will be chosen among the final candidates. Those who are interested in registering, please register with Director Zhao and me today. After reporting to the commune tomorrow, the village committee will stick the candidate list on the notice board. Please pay attention. Today's broadcast ends here. Thank you. The villagers who were working in the fields were not very surprised when they heard the radio announcement. After Sun Wang left, they would definitely choose a newcomer. However, everyone had their own thoughts on who to vote for. Which people do you think will sign up? Director Lu, the director of security, will definitely sign up. The accountant Mr. Wei will probably sign up too. Hey, Director Zhao, are you going to sign up or not? If you sign up, I'll definitely choose you. Didn't Hua Mulan sing that song? Who said that women are inferior to men? That's right. Director Zhao, sign up as well to represent our women. Zhao Lin originally didn't want to participate in the election, but she couldn't resist the encouragement of the female comrade beside her, so she agreed with a smile. All right, I'll sign up and join in the fun. On behalf of our female compatriots, I'll say a few words at the meeting to fight for women's rights. The field was especially lively today. Everyone was actively discussing who would participate or encouraging the villagers they thought highly of to sign up. When she got off work at noon, Yu Bing happened to return to the village. The scorekeeper saw Yu Bing and kindly reminded her that her letter had arrived in the office yesterday. Yu Bing thanked her and stopped the car by the roadside. Then, she walked into the village committee to get the letter. At this moment, Yu Yin was looking for a letter in the envelope in her office. After finding it, she took it out and casually glanced at it. She happened to see Yu Bing's letter beside her letter. Yu Yan's hand moved faster than she could react. By the time she reacted, she had already placed her letter aside and picked up Yu Bing's letter. This was the first time Yu Yan had seen the Yu family's address clearly. She reached out and gently stroked the words on it. This is my family's home address. Yu Yan thought excitedly. She tried to memorize every word of the letter. The person who sent the letter was Yu Pan. Yu Yan guessed that it was her sister and immediately felt a sense of intimacy. She smiled and looked at the letter again and again, imagining that this was a letter her parents and siblings had specifically sent because they missed her. What are you doing with my letter? A soft voice sounded from behind Yu Yan. Ah! Yu Yan was so startled that she shouted and jumped up. Zhao Lin, who was working at the side, looked up at the two of them. Yu Yan turned around and saw Yu Bing smiling at her. She hurriedly patted her chest and scolded angrily, Yu Bing, what's wrong with you? Yu Bing looked at Yu Yan innocently. I saw you holding my letter, so it's normal for me to ask. Moreover, why did you take my letter? Yu Yan's eyes flickered when she heard this. She felt a little unnerved, but pretended to be calm as she replied, I took the wrong one. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 68, Full Month Banquet. Zhao Lin put down her pen and walked over. What happened? Seeing this, Yu Yan immediately replied, it's fine, Director Zhao. I took the wrong letter. Yu Bing stared into Yu Yan's eyes and revealed a faint smile. Do you think it's fine to yell at me after you took the wrong letter? I saw that you looked so emotional when you took my letter. I was frightened since I thought you were going to take my letter away. When Yu Yan's thoughts were exposed, she immediately retorted, who said I took your letter? Stop slandering me. Yu Bing tilted her head and looked at Yu Yan with a frown as she said, I didn't slander you. I just said I thought you were going to take my letter away with me. Moreover, you did take the wrong letter and shout at me. The letter box was placed on the table beside Zhao Lin's desk. She usually kept it. When she took it out at work, she would lock it back in the cabinet after leaving the office. Zhao Lin saw Yu Yan's abnormal reaction and looked at her suspiciously. Then, she said slowly, all right, it's a small matter. You can just apologize. Yu Yan widened her eyes when she heard this. Why should I apologize? Why should she apologize? If not for Yu Bing, she wouldn't have been sent away. This letter would have been sent to her. Yu Bing wouldn't even receive this letter. Zhao Lin couldn't stand Yu Yan's behavior to begin with. She looked healthy, but when it came to work, she would always look for substitutes. Yu Bing was different. Although she was thin, she was a diligent worker and drove such a heavy tractor with ease. Her son often praised Yu Bing at home. Hence, when Zhao Lin heard Yu Yan's retort, she felt even more uncomfortable. She took the letter from Yu Yan's hand and handed it over after confirming that it was Yu Bing's. She said to Yu Yan sternly, "Is it that difficult for you to apologize to someone after taking the wrong letter? You're really unreasonable." When Yu Yan saw Zhao Lin's angry expression, she felt that the entire world was going against her. However, she knew that she couldn't offend the villagers if she wanted to continue to live here, so she looked at Yu Bing and said reluctantly, "I'm sorry." Yu Bing smirked slightly as she said softly, "It's okay." Yu Yan took the letter she had placed at the side and left angrily. Yu Bing thanked Zhao Lin and left the office. Looking at Yu Yan's back, Yu Bing suddenly had a new idea. Since Yu Yan was looking for trouble, Yu Yan should not blame her for beating her at her own game. After returning home, Yu Bing opened the letter and quickly browsed through it. Her family found out that Jiang Chun had sent 20 pounds of apples and a jar of honey back home. They asked Yu Bing why she didn't send them, and asked her to send all the rations she could send home. Jiang Chun's parents wished they could bring everything they could to Jiang Chun, so after Jiang Chun obtained something, she would naturally want to send it home. The Yu family was the exact opposite. They wished that Yu Bing would send all her rations back home every month at her own expense. Moreover, Yu Bing was certain that even if she did this, the Yu family wouldn't remember her kindness. Yu Bing pursed her lips. She knew it. Why would the Yu family take the initiative to send her a letter? As expected, they had a motive. If it wasn't for the sake of setting a trap for Yu Yan, she wouldn't have bothered to reply to this letter. Yu Bing quickly wrote the letter and placed it aside. She planned to send it from the county city tomorrow so that Yu Yan could see the reply quickly. At the thought of this, Yu Bing couldn't help but smile evilly. She couldn't wait to see Yu Yan's expression when she saw the reply. After the excavation mission was completed on Friday morning, Yu Bing drove the tractor straight to the Song family's home to attend the baby shower. Yu Bing had just reached the door when she heard the lively laughter inside. She raised her hand and knocked. Song Li opened the door. "Yu Bing, we were waiting for you. Everyone is here." Song Li hugged Yu Bing's shoulder and smiled as she entered the living room. Mrs. Song was busy in the kitchen. Mr. Song and Song Jian were drinking tea and talking with a middle-aged man in the living room. Wang Yun and a young man were sitting at the side and playing with little treasure. When Wang Yun saw Yu Bing, she smiled and held her hand as they walked into the living room. "Dad, brother, this is my godsister, Yu Bing." With that, she turned to Yu Bing and introduced, "Yu Bing, this is the first time you've seen my family. My father is from the Food Bureau. My brother, Wang Wei, is a small official in the government." Yu Bing greeted everyone one by one. The Wang family's father and son secretly sized Yu Bing up. They realized that although this girl was young, she was very graceful and composed. Her eyes were clear, and she didn't seem like a scheming person. They had a good impression of her. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 69, Out of League. Wang Qing went forward excitedly and said to Yu Bing, "Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to see my daughter. I wouldn't have had the face to see my deceased wife after I die." Wang Wei followed behind his father and thanked her with a smile. "Yu Bing, thank you for saving my sister." When Yu Bing saw the harmonious family relationship of the Wang family, she replied with a gentle expression, "Please don't be so polite. Previously, Sister Yun, Brother Song, Uncle Song, and Auntie Song have thanked me a few times already. Anyone would have helped if they encountered this matter. It's just that I happened to encounter it this time." The Wang family's father and son had already found out about Yu Bing's personality from Wang Yun, so they stopped being polite. Wang Qing said to Yu Bing kindly, "We're family. Wang Yun has acknowledged you as her sister, so you can call me Uncle Wang. Wang Wei will be your brother. You came all the way to our province to help build a village, so if you encounter any difficulties, come find Wang Yun." Yu Bing smiled and nodded as she said jokingly, "Uncle Wang, I won't stand on ceremony then." Wang Yun hurriedly said, "That's how it should be." Seeing this, Yu Bing took out a zodiac card she had specifically found someone to make with silver. She handed it to Wang Yun with a smile. "This is a 1-month-old gift for little treasure. I can't afford gold, so I can only use silver instead." Wang Yun took it and saw that on one side of the zodiac card, there was the zodiac symbol, and on the other side, there was a happy child. Wang Yun liked it very much. "What's the need for gold? The child is still young. It's not good to keep too expensive a gift, so silver is just right." Everyone chatted and laughed in a harmonious atmosphere. After dinner, Yu Bing sat for a while before bidding farewell. When they got off work at night, everyone passed by the notice board and saw the new list of candidates for the village chief position. There were a total of 7 people. The security director, Lu Bao, the female director, Zhao Lin, the accountant, Wei Zhen, Wu Jin, and the 3 village team leaders, who were Lin Chang, Zhao Gui, and Yu Fei. Although they were all from the same village and were very familiar with each other, the announcement still gave a simple description of the candidate's situation. Firstly, it was a standard requirement for the public announcement, and secondly, it was for the young people who had just arrived at the He Mountain Brigade and didn't know the situation in the village. Yu Bing leaned forward and saw Wu Jin's name. She raised her eyebrows and gave Xiaoxing a thumbs up. "You're quite capable." Xiaoxing glanced at Yu Bing with a faint smile. The scene of the two of them interacting happened to be seen by Yu Yan, who was standing in front of the notice board. Although Yu Yan and Yan Yan had become much closer these few days, and she had some feelings for Yan Yan, compared to Xiaoxing, one was like a high mountain flower that people couldn't help but look up to and want to conquer, while the other was as gentle as water. Yan Yan's gentleness alone could indeed attract her, but compared to Xiaoxing's aloofness, Yan Yan seemed as plain as a glass of water. Yu Yan saw Xiaoxing smile from the side and the jealousy in her heart began to spread. She suddenly thought of a plan. She stared at Yu Bing from the corner of her eye and scolded softly, "*TCH. Shameless." Yu Bing was close to Yu Yan, so she naturally heard everything clearly. However, Yu Yan didn't name her, so she couldn't say anything. She wouldn't go forward to be scolded. However, Yu Bing ignoring Yu Yan agitated her even more. "You seduced another man even though you have a fiance. What a slut." She was practically naming her. At this moment, there were not many people surrounding the notice board. There were only 20 or so people. Because of Yan Yan spreading the word, everyone knew that among the people present, only Yu Bing had a fiancé. A few gossipy middle-aged women immediately felt the tension between the two of them and quickly turned their gazes to them. Xiaoxing knew that Yu Yan was hinting at something, but he couldn't say anything. Otherwise, it would only cause gossip. Moreover, he knew that Yu Bing could deal with such people who caused trouble for no reason. Yu Bing turned around and looked at Yu Yan coldly. "You feel uncomfortable if you don't cause trouble for a day, right?" Yu Yan gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "I'm just telling the truth. If you dare to do it, why are you afraid of others saying it? You're pretending to be chaste." Yu Bing clenched her fists and said calmly, "What did I do? Tell me. If you can't tell me the truth, I'll report you to Director Lu and Director Zhao for slander. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." Chapter 70, Innocence. Yu Yan glared at Yu Bing and snorted. "Fine, I'll say it. I'm not afraid of you. You clearly have a fiancé, but you still flirt with other men all day long and even took in 2 disciples. Who knows if those disciples are learning how to drive a tractor or actually sleeping with you? You spend all day." Before Yu Yan could finish speaking, she was hit by the handle of the tractor. Although she dodged in time, she was still hit. This was an iron product. Even if she was just slightly hit, Yu Yan still felt the pain. Yu Yan screamed and immediately ran to the side to hide behind a woman. However, she continued to say, "You don't dare to let me say it, right? You're a slut who likes to hang around with men all day long. You're the only woman who goes to the county to train drivers. I think you're probably no longer a virgin." The more Yu Yan spoke, the smugger she became and the louder she shouted. Yu Bing was so angry that she wanted to chase after Yu Yan and beat her up. However, she knew that she couldn't be rash at this time. If she was led by the nose by Yu Yan, even if she defeated Yu Yan, the rumor would spread. In this day and age, moral conduct was very important. If one were to sleep around, they would be paraded on the streets to be publicly condemned. So she had to dispel this rumor now. Yu Bing looked at the surrounding crowd and shouted, "Please help me call Director Lu and Director Zhao. Someone is slandering me. I want to find some higher-ups to uphold justice for me." The contrast between Yu Bing's capableness and her thin figure made many people admire her very much. In addition, after Yu Bing became a tractor driver, every time she encountered villagers on the way, she would bring them along. She was polite and had a good temper. Most of the villagers had a good impression of her, so as soon as Yu Bing shouted, someone went to help call for help. Yu Yan originally only wanted to throw out the topic to agitate Yu Bing into arguing with her. After all, messy relationships were the best after-meal topics, and the most ambiguous topics as well. As long as Yu Bing started an argument with her, once everyone saw enough and left, someone would naturally help her add fuel to the fire. As the saying went, the law couldn't be enforced when everyone was an offender. When the rumor spread, it would be difficult for Yu Bing to completely turn the situation around. However, Yu Bing didn't fall for Yu Yan's trap. Now, she was determined to find the village staff to interfere. Firstly, she wanted to prove her innocence, and secondly, she wanted everyone present to see the entire process clearly. Yu Yan panicked a little. After all, she would be exposed. She couldn't prove that there was something wrong with Yu Bing's moral conduct in front of the village staff, so she mustered the courage to shout, "Forget it. You still have the cheek to call the director and the others over? If I were you, I would have run home. I don't want to be with a promiscuous woman like you lest you taint my innocence." With that, she turned around and wanted to leave. Yu Bing immediately went forward and grabbed Yu Yan's arm. She glared at Yu Yan and said fiercely, "Don't even think about leaving before the director comes." "Why? Are you afraid and want to run away after creating a rumor?" Seeing this, Yu Yan knew that it was probably impossible for her to escape. Hence, she struggled free from Yu Bing's grip and said loudly, "I won't leave. I want to see how you'll distort the truth later." The two directors arrived very quickly. When Director Zhao saw that it was Yu Yan again and thought of how his family's dinner would be delayed again, he said impatiently, "Yu Yan, why is it you again? What's the matter this time?" Yu Yan pretended to be aggrieved as she said, "I just said a few words to Yu Bing, but she got upset and insisted on looking for you." When Yu Bing heard Yu Yan's words, she snorted and frowned. "Yu Yan, your ability to gloss over the important things is really superb." After saying that, she turned around and stood upright in front of the two directors. She looked at the two of them firmly. "Director Lu, Director Zhao, in front of so many people, Yu Yan slandered me for sleeping around with men." When Director Lu heard this, he frowned and said sternly, "Yu Yan, this matter is quite serious. You have to show evidence." How could Yu Yan have any evidence? She could only take it one step at a time. She crossed her hands and said, "Director Lu, Yu Bing has a fiance, right? Everyone in the village knows that ever since Yu Bing became a tow truck driver, she has been hanging out with men all day long, whether she's training or taking in disciples. Visit and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much."